Welcome in, Warchant Game Day. Yes, also hour 3 of the Jeff Cameron Show for those watching live. Good to be with you always as Florida State takes on Wake Forest. Tom and I are here to talk about it. You guys may be in town listening to it and or watching it as you make your way towards Tallahassee, Florida. Lovely football weather, probably as good as one could hope for. And, maybe that lessens the pain of 4 straight ACC losses this year. Maybe that lessens the pain of 9 straight dating back to last year. Maybe that lessens the pain of expectations not met. I don't know, but it'll be a good time to be at Doak Campbell Stadium or Hotel Indigo for that matter, where right now we're shaking hands, kissing babies, and having some cocktails before Florida State takes on Wake Forest at 7:30 because it's what we do. That's what we do for home games. No matter the state of the program, we are there at Hotel Indigo. We are shaking those hands and having those conversations, delightfully so. I love talking to the listeners and fellow Florida State fans and alumni that support this program through thick and thin. And it's been too much thin, that's for sure. We'll see if we can get some goodness tonight out there at Doak and Florida State get back in the win column. I don't know, maybe baby steps here or there. I do know this. Anytime Florida State suits up to play a football game, no matter the circumstances or conditions off the field or whatever it might be that we're discussing around the program, I want them to win. I want them to win the football game. And this is an imminently winnable football game. We'll see what the mindset is. We'll see whether or not there's a willingness to fight, because I think they will have to fight, Tom, to win the game. I think Wake will be here to play, and too many of our fans have a long, storied memory about Wake Forest being on the other side of an important Florida State game where the program is either vying for something and then has it derailed or is off the tracks, and this is a further cementing of that fact. Just too many moments between Florida State and Wake Forest. It's odd how it lines up that way. The only other program in the ACC that can say that is NC State. NC State has been on the other side of many a moment, if you will, for Florida State fans as well. But tonight, I'm curious to see what the mentality is, to see where they're at. There's no getting around the fact that we look big picture as we start the show today, because Florida State is once again in a set of dire circumstances, dead ass last in the ACC. Boston College does have one more loss than we do in the ACC, but both squads are winless in the win column in the conference, and so there's that. And we were just there a year ago, and the changes that were made were certainly ones that we thought would lead to radical shifts in where it is Florida State sits in the ACC. And how could we not have thought that when in Game 1 Florida State knocked off Alabama? And yet, that is the reality. That's exactly where Florida State's at. Which team do we see tonight? The team that showed up, played angry, played hard, played physical, played with emotional stability, but also real fervor against Alabama, or the one that's rattled off these 9 straight ACC losses?
Yeah, make no mistake, this is an embarrassing time to be a Florida State Seminole. If you love this football program, if you're a part of this football program, it's embarrassing. And we hope that when tonight's game kicks off that you have some moments where you can smile, because there are individual performances that take place that make you feel proud. You see some kids inspired, and it feels as though they are trying to live up to what the program is supposed to be about. And they're usually, even in the midst of moments like this, last year, you're 2-10, you felt good about the effort that Earl Little brought forward. Unfortunately, this season it hasn't parlayed itself into like this other thing. The Alabama game was wonderful for Earl, but there were moments and players. Darrell Jackson got better as the season went along last year. Josh Farmer was fairly consistent for the entirety of the season last year. Lawrence Toafili, wish they handed him the ball a lot more, but you were proud when he took the field. You were proud of the effort he put out there, and we'd see him in the first quarter and then maybe like for a moment in the fourth. That's what I'm looking for today. Is it Chroma? Is it Deuce Robinson? Is it somebody on that defensive line? Is it Darrell Jackson again? Maybe somebody in the secondary. Jabril Rawls coming back and being healthy is great for Florida State. That dude has played up to the standard this year. You have to search very, very hard, like a Where's Waldo game or an I Spy book, in order to find these moments, and that's what's embarrassing about where we are. But the game will kick off, and you're looking for those moments because we're all Noles and we're all trying to get through this together, and you're looking for a reason and something to latch on to. It's certainly not the guys leading it on the sidelines, but hopefully it's a few of the players that will be.
You know, you never want to put bad film out there, and I talk about that a lot from a player's perspective. You got pride. You only get 12 of these. You work really hard every day in practice. You built yourself up, your body and your mind throughout the course of the offseason to get this opportunity. And you'd like to believe that collectively that everybody comes together in these moments. We've seen otherwise at times here at Florida State in recent memory. I like this group in the sense that I don't think they're like some of their predecessors. I do think this is a group filled with guys that play hard. I don't know about the Stanford game. I don't think they look prepared to play. Something seemed off. That's more of a damning statement about Mike Norvell and this coaching staff not having them ready to play. But I think in the previous games, that is to say the previous losses, they did play hard. Last year's group that went 2-10 did not. So that's something. You know, if you'd like to believe that that's going to continue, that they will play hard, then maybe you could latch on to a big performance tonight from a Deuce Robinson. Maybe it is the freshman in Croma who just has himself a night that we remember and kind of a coming out party and a reason to get excited. Maybe it is a couple of these defensive players. It's hard to say right now. We are, and if it sounds like it, it's true, sort of grasping at straws at this point. Nobody thought Florida State was going to lose 4 straight ACC games to start their conference campaign this year. We did not. There's no way you could have after winning against Alabama and looking so good in 2 games in which you faced a really overmatched opponent, but you did what good teams do against those opponents. You lit them up, you dominated the game, you scored at will, you did all the things. And then it starts with a loss to Virginia, and all of a sudden it spirals into something entirely different. And I don't know what there is right now. And we're talking to fellow Noles who are coming to town for this game or are in town for this game. They continue to show up. They continue to give their money. They continue to be emotionally and financially attached to their university, who care deeply about where this program's headed, who's controlling this program, who's at the helm, both on the field and off the field. It is hard to tell you what you have to look forward to or what you should latch onto or what a win tonight would even mean. And that is a sad, sorry set of circumstances that make it difficult for games like this, pregame shows like this, moments like this, because I want to win every time. Again, I'm not playing, but Florida State is, and I want them to win every single time. And yet I just don't know big picture what that means. And so it's hard to do a pregame show when you don't know whether or not winning or losing makes a difference.
Yeah, 100%. You feel like you're in limbo, purgatory, whatever you want to call it. What I would say is, just to recap how we got here very, very briefly, the Virginia Friday night, you're poor in some situations offensively, and then defensively, you're not great that night. That's how you lose that football game. Against Miami, they're a better football team, and your quarterback laid an egg. Against Pitt, you played hesitant on defense because you made mistakes in one regard against Virginia and in the opposite regard against Miami. So now you're kind of in between and you're rat trapping. And I think that's, in a way, that's trickled up to the sideline and the defensive coordinator, who seems like he's rat trapping now a little bit because these buttons he's trying to push are not working. And then for the Stanford game, you look flat as a pancake. And by the time that game was over, for their normal body clocks, and I'm not trying to make excuses here, I'm just pointing it out, they're like awake 2 hours after that in their usual practice regimen because they practice early morning on the East Coast. They're up at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning, and they looked flat emotionally. They looked flat physically. They looked ill-prepared. So that's how you get to 4 games in a row that you lose for different reasons, but they all spiral. And the one thing I've learned watching a lot of pro football and college football over the years is when the basic stuff looks hard, when it just looks so hard to execute basic things, that means that there's no confidence and kids are hesitant and they're in their own head. And that falls on the sidelines. That falls onto what the coaches do and how they prepare the players for the given weekend. They swear up and down that this week of practice has been a lot better. Extreme energy, I believe, was the quote from Mike Norvell. Okay. They've had a lot of really good weeks of practice, apparently, even in the midst of the 4-game losing streak. Let's see it on the field tonight. I really hope we do. I sound extremely negative because it's a negative time. I want to see it. I'm begging you. Please give us that effort. Give us that ACC win we haven't had in 400 days on the calendar. I hope they bring it tonight because there are a lot of kids that are working very, very hard. They're just shot confidence-wise.
I don't even know what extreme energy means. It's just a silly, rhetorical, silly thing to say. I just, anyhow, that's an aside. just you have energy, you don't have energy, you have focus, you don't have focus, you are practicing well, you're not practicing well, you're executing, you're not executing. These are just simple concepts here, and those are how you phrase them. I don't know how offensively, if Tommy Castellanos is not healthy tonight, and that's what we're going to be looking for right off the bat. Let's find out where he's at, because this whole thing is predicated on whether or not he can run. And if we're going to talk about the nuts and bolts of this football game in a 45-minute, 50-minute pregame show, then we got to talk about the quarterback first and foremost. He hasn't been any good. Now, let's just say it. He hasn't. He misses wide open guys frequently. He also doesn't see wide open guys frequently, and he's not running the football because he's dinged. If he's not going to run the football, he's of no use to you. You might as well start Sperry or Brock. I don't care which one. Somebody who can move, somebody who can engage in that aspect of this offense. This offense really hums with a quarterback that makes the defense play the entirety of the offense differently. And we haven't had that as of late. So, Tommy, when he's good, and we saw him be good against Alabama, certainly, we've seen him be good before. When he's good, when he's healthy, when he's running, when he's a threat, it can be an offense that can score a lot of points. It could be a difficult offense to stop. When he's not right and he's not able to run, he's not a good enough passer, he doesn't see it, doesn't have a great pocket presence, you're going to lose the football game, because Wake Forest's defense is very good. I think Wake Forest's defense loves to play defense. That's actually the greatest compliment I can give them. They love to play defense. Watching them, you can tell they love each other and they love to play defense. It is so fun to watch. If Tommy's not healthy and unable to run tonight, it'll be real fun for them again at Wake Forest to play defense. Let's hope that's not the case. That's something you want to keep an eye on early in this football game. And if it is the case that Tommy's unable to run or doesn't want to run, isn't a willing runner, how soon do they pull? How soon do they pull him in that situation? Because I think you've seen enough at this point to know that if he's not going to be that guy, your offense scores 13 points against Stanford is what happens.
Yeah, exactly. That's one thing that gets lost in the shuffle. We look at the Stanford loss in totality, and we say, how the hell did that happen? And that's unforgivable. And that's correct. It's a fireable offense, and we'll see if it leads to something down the line. But it's the 13 points. If you just get it, I understand they had 400 yards of offense, but it's the 13 points. How is that possible? How is that possible against a defense that is that bad? And it's not like they were playing like gangbusters that night if you watch the flow of the game. It's that you've got a quarterback who has been affected both physically and mentally by his injury. I think it's also caused him to be sped up in the pocket and make decisions and like he never would if he was fully healthy. He's free and loose when he's a healthy player. I think if Tommy Castellanos doesn't injure his leg against Kent State, Florida State is at least 4-3, if not 5-2. But you know what? As an offensive coordinator, you're allowed to counter that by either replacing him or calling plays that he can't miss. And so here we are stuck between. He's listed as probable for today. That was according to the Thursday injury report. Tommy Castellanos listed as probable. He can play and he can take the first snap, but we're all going to be watching how is he going to play. Is he explosive? Because, yes, quarterback run does work against most defenses, but specifically what Wake has been susceptible to giving up are explosive plays either in the run game. You're going to bash your head against the wall 10 times. Maybe on the 11th, you finally break one for 25 or 30 yards. The deep shot, if you can get them in situations where they have to go man-to-man, you're able to take shots down the field, and then quarterback run. That's how Georgia Tech was able to come back in unlikely fashion to beat Wake Forest earlier this year, was they decided Haynes King's going to have to be the key to everything. And the fear of Haynes King is going to open up some throwing lanes. If Tommy's hampered today, you're in a whole lot of trouble, because this defense at times looks mortal, and they are, but they're also long stretches of games recently for Wake Forest where they look electric defensively. I mean, like a bunch of hornets, and they do love to play, and they'll let you know it after the play. They've got that type of edge that Mike Norvell has been talking about since March, and that's the hard part about today. You really could use a quarterback who could run.
Well, Mike Norvell is 25-8 in November as head coach at Florida State, 12-5 at home, Tom. These are gaudy numbers, sir. I don't know how they could fall this evening against Wake Forest, given that track record of November success. So just get excited about what you're going to see out here tonight, buddy.
That's true. There was the September problem for about 4 or 5 years, and then we just went 0 for October. We did not record a win in the month of October. So you've got a battle of two trends, though. So you got November success against ACC. Fill in the blank with your favorite Mad Lib adjective, because it ain't great. Something's got to give tonight on Bobby Bowden Field.
Whew. I didn't think we'd get through that opening, but we did. We made it. They're going to play. Florida State, Wake Forest are definitely going to play. It's going to be a chilly night. It's going to be fun. If you are watching this, listening to this, and you're making your way, as I said earlier, into Tallahassee, make sure you stop by Hotel Indigo. Our friends there would be happy to see you, and they have food, and they have drinks, and they have the best view of Doak Campbell Stadium in all of Tallahassee.
Well, and something we don't often have to say, but it's going to be warmer inside in case you feel a little chilly. Usually it's come on into the AC, run away from the conditions that are 110. Well, it's the opposite too. Indoor bathrooms, indoor heating. It'll be a very nice evening.
More Warchant game day in a moment.
Hey, this is Jay Green from Hotel Indigo Tallahassee. Can I stop and say thank you? Thank you for telling your guests to stay with us. Thank you for hosting your corporate meetings and social events in our rooftop meeting space. Thank you for hanging out with us on FSU football game days. Believe it or not, this sales guy isn't selling anything. I just want to say thank you. But if you've never seen our rooftop and I can ever help, give us a call, 850-755-9011. We are Hotel Indigo Tallahassee. Welcome to our neighborhood.
Looks like Robbie Ashford will start the game for Wake Forest at quarterback. There was some question this week as to whether or not it was going to be Ashford or Deshaun Purdy. We weren't real sure here. I don't care as much about that as I do looking at Damon Claiborne, who's been really good for them. One of the better rushers in the ACC, in fact. And Claiborne's a guy, Tom, that, you look at him statistically in terms of his, I guess you look at his measurables, and you wouldn't be all that impressed. But ACC yards per carry, he's in the top 5. He's number 4 in the conference at 6.65 yards per carry. He has 92 carries on the year, so it's not like they haven't given it to him. I mean, Hollywood Smothers at NC State has 120 carries already, but 92 is next best in the conference. So he's a workhorse. He has, he's going to clearly surpass 1,000 yards rushing this year. So this is a guy that they'll see if you're interested. They'll see if you're interested in coming up and tackling.
Yeah, and he's got some speed to him as well. He could pull away from you. He has a run this year for 85 yards and a touchdown. But you just watch him play, and it's one of those, it's get him on the ground early. You get him on the ground early, ain't no problem. But the longer the play goes, the more problematic it can be. And, yes, he will fight through contact. Some scat backs or speed backs are just get a hand on him, they go down. We have somebody who is a pretty highly heralded last year as a freshman, and you get him a hand on him and he goes down, and he's not even a pull away kind of a guy. But Claiborne can run. And you're right, 612 yards. The guy that scares me is Chris Barnes, the wide receiver, number 10. Diminutive in size, but he reminds me very much of a Tony from Miami. He's the same kind of a player where extremely electric, explosive in short areas. If you assume and over pursue, he can cut back with explosiveness, and he's already into second or third gear, and he'll take off. This is another one of those tests where in isolation, I think Wake Forest is going to try and test where Florida State is from a mentality standpoint. If you're on your P's and Q's and you're technically sound, you're going to get these guys on their ground. But if you're half-stepping, if you're guessing which gap to go, if you're lazy on your leverage, these are the types of guys that can make you miss and turn a gain of 3 into a gain of 13 or 20. And that is the truth serum thing that we talked about last year with Amari and Hampton. Different type of player, but same kind of test here. The same kind of test here for your mentality.
Well, the reason I started here, Tom, is we always look at the opponent when we do this show, most of the time anyhow. And the reason I'm starting with the offense is it's going to be a brief conversation. This is not an offense that ought to go up and down the field tonight against Florida State. If it does, we've got bigger problems than we realize, and we already realize we have a lot of problems. Their offensive success rate is 38% for the passing attack, which is or 38.1% in the passing attack. That's good for 117th in the country. Their rushing attack is at 35% success rate. That's 132nd in the country. Their offense of success rate as a whole is 128th in the country. Their offense kind of sucks. Let's just say it. It kind of sucks. They've got a couple players we like. I named one. Tom named one. There you go. We named the two that we needed to name. It's not loaded for bear. You're not like, well, there's an element. No. Florida State's defense ought to be able to, again, I stress the word ought to, be able to get stops tonight. They ought to be able to give their offense numerous opportunities to move the football. I don't think Wake's going to line up and move up and down the field if you care to be there. Now, again, let's find out what they are. Just something to point out. The other side of the ball has much more impressive statistics, and I'll cite those in a moment. But don't you agree? This is not – we're not – sometimes you play a bad team, and I think Wake's a pretty good team. They certainly are a team. And what I mean by that is they love each other. They play for each other. This is a good coach. This program, I'll tell you what, man, one year after the next, you go all the way back to Grobe, they find coaches to overachieve at Wake Forest. It's something, the way they are able to cultivate a real pride and team effort year in and year out. They have seasons where they lose a bunch of games because they're not talented enough. But you know what you don't see from Wake Forest? You don't see this fractured brokenness of a program year over year like you do frequently here. And I think that's a testament to their culture at Wake. I think it's impressive.
Yeah, I'd love to get Luke Pettibone's perspective on this, because he left thinking that when Clausen was gone, it was going to break. I wonder if he thinks to himself, well, they got something cooking over there. Robbie Ashford is a runner. The other quarterback, Deshaun Purdy, is not. So if Ashford plays, you do have to add that element to it. A couple of games this year for Ashford, 82 yards rushing against Georgia Tech, 66 against Western Carolina and a blowout. And then the season opener that we all remember, a classic against Kennesaw State, a 10-9 win for Wake Forest. He had 42 yards rushing. So there are a few elements here. What I've seen from Wake Forest is we laugh at those early results. This is a team that's gotten a lot better as the weeks go on both sides of the ball. If they were a little bit better, well, just marginally better with goal-to-go situations offensively. I'm not even talking red zone. I'm saying 1st and goal from the 8, 3rd and goal from the 4. If they were just a little bit better in that part of the field, they'd have a much better ACC record, and they'd have a much better overall record, and I think they'd have our attention a little bit more. Situationally, they've been awful. They've thrown 6 interceptions as a group against just 8 touchdowns. That is both quarterbacks combined, the passing game combined. So they're going to give you the ball if you're man enough to take the ball away from them. And they're also not going to be great in situations. They're in their own head about red zone. If they're really good in the red zone today, let's say they have 3 possessions and they score 3 touchdowns, or even 2 for 2, that also tells you a little bit about where they are and where we are, more importantly, defensively. So, yeah, I think this is a plucky group offensively. If they look consistent today, that's on us, and that gives another message like we received from the Stanford game.
Too many times I feel like we've had the conversation where somebody or something or a team or a side of the ball is emerging. They are beginning to play better right as we play them. There is this moment, it's like they say in baseball, if you've got a deficiency, the ball will find it. In baseball, if you got a shaky outfield defense, it's going to come up in a tie ball game in the 7th that somebody should have made a catch on a routine fly ball but didn't. It's going to show up that somebody doesn't have the arm requisite to hold the runner at 2nd and not have him take 3rd on a fly ball. It's going to show up, and you're going to get exposed. And for Florida State, it's interesting. It's every time they start one of these spirals, or every time something or an aspect of the team, of the game, of the side of the ball that you're watching closely is beginning to show weakness or falter or isn't locked in, you play a team whose counter to that is they are emerging, they are arriving, they are showing up, and it's antithetical to the stats that they possess coming into the game. And that's the argument you could make for Wake, is that they're a much better team now than they were earlier this season, and some of those results serve as a weight to bog them down statistically. When you look at the numbers offensively, they may be a much better team than the one that you saw earlier in the year, but they're still not a juggernaut, and it ought not happen with any degree of consistency tonight. To Tom's point, that would send a much uglier message. Now, one thing has been consistent, and we did talk about this and refer to it before. We should do it again here, and that is their defense. And their defense going against Florida State's offense, which statistically, Florida State's offense still ranks highly in both traditional stats and advanced metrics. But I think that's fool's gold for a lot of reasons. I do think this offense produces a lot of empty yards. but it's still a top 50 offense, if really no matter how you look at it right now. Defensively, Wake Forest against the pass has been very, very good. Their EPA per pass is it's top 10 right now. Their success rate is very, very good. Their third down success rate is not bad. Early down success rate is top 5. They get stops. They get you behind the chains. Defensive success rate is number 7 overall in the country. Against the pass is number 2. And against the rush, Tom, I think this is where you're going to hit it, and we can flip it back to Florida State here. Against the rush, their success rate is 61st in the country. So there, if you're looking for an aspect of this defense, despite all those good numbers, including some top 10 numbers, there's where you can see, like, okay, if you run Adam, and I mean Adam, you have a chance to have success. Or if the quarterback can run, you can have success. Don't run wide. No slow developing plays. None of the east-west nonsense. We need north-south here. This should be a chroma game. This should be a downhill game, Tom.
Yeah, this is a group that loves east-west defensively. They're ready for it. They'll stay at home. They don't bite on fakes. If they do today, that means that we scheme something up that they hadn't seen, because they're ready for a whole lot of the elements in this offense that SMU, frankly, rolls out there. This is a good comp that you got last week watching SMU's offense in preparation for Florida State's game. Again, Georgia Tech wanted to run at you with the quarterback, and that's how they turned a 21-3 deficit into a game down the stretch, and obviously they end up winning the game later. That's not something that we can bring to the table, especially even with Tommy healthy. It was quarterback power, like straight-up physicality up the middle. SMU had a ton of trouble when they tried to go to the perimeter. And Rhett Lashley has a habit of getting cute. Anybody know about anybody else who likes to get cute from time to time? If you go straight ahead, you've got a chance here because they are undersized. They will lighten the box, too, from in terms of down linemen. You'll have advantageous situations that way. But are you going to be consistent enough to do that? If Florida State does, and they decide, all right, let's keep it simple here, I think this is a chance for Florida State to actually have success rate in tempo against this defense. So many times we've seen this season a first down play or an explosive play. Florida State gets up to the line. They want to run tempo. Next thing you know, we're in 2nd and 9. And you're like, well, how the hell did that happen? How are we always in 2nd and 9? Isn't tempo supposed to be our weapon? I think in this instance, you might actually succeed in those situations if you can get to them, because usually our first down play out of tempo is an inside zone. Usually it's for something very, very simple. I'll be interested to see. I think that they're also susceptible over the top, because if you get them to commit more and you get them to play anything but their over-the-top shell, you might have a chance for some Deuce Robinson yardage down the field. I wish I could say Squirrel White has a chance, but we don't ever use him. But somebody, Mekhi Danzy, Lawayne McCoy, you could have a chance at some downfield shots. The whole thing that you have to sort through is they'll add a 5th and a 6th, and they'll bring pressures from all sides, much like Miami did, much like Pitt did. We didn't always handle that all that well. Dare I say, this group is faster at that part of it. I don't think they're as physical, but they're faster at those types of pressures. So it'll be interesting to see how we handle that. I think between the tackles, yes, in short, is the right way to attack it.
Yeah, I think we should bludgeon them, and I'm hoping that that's the approach. It also does so much for your overall confidence as well as toughness of a football team when you beat somebody that way. If you really are one of these people who's like, hey, look, we'll sort out whatever's going to happen with Mike Norvell at the end of the year. I want to win some damn games. Can we just get to winning some games? Well, one of the ways that I think you would do that is to garner some confidence somewhere along the way, both in getting stops on defense, obviously. That stands to reason. But finding an identity, finding something you can hang your hat on offense and getting back to it. And I've wanted them to be a team that could run the ball between the tackles. I thought they had a chance to do that at the beginning of the year. There was some success in doing that at the beginning of the year. If they could get back to doing that tonight, I think it could carry over. It could give you a shot in some of these other games, like on the road against Clemson. This is, to me, that's always a shot in the arm for an offense because it travels. It's the kind of thing that makes you feel confident because you know that you're tough. If you run between the tackles, if you run at people and you succeed, it means you are tough by definition typically. And that, again, does travel.
Well, that's one thing this year that we look at all the reasons that we're pissed off about what Florida State's not doing. The offensive line's not near the top of the list. It's been okay. I think it has been, especially when Pettis is healthy, when Micah Pettis is out there on the field, it has been largely what it was acquired to be.
Yeah, it's been okay.
Yeah, if you got gripes, I think you start several other places before you get to the O-line. And today could be one of those days. They had a couple of statement drives or potential statement drives on the ground get thwarted by turnovers, by fumbles, by getting behind the chains for whatever reason, because you get cute with a double reverse or something along those lines. One of which was the killer, unfortunately, is my guy, but Keziah Holmes against Pitt. They weren't going to pass the ball. Like, they were done passing the ball for the day. But it was going to work, except, you put the ball on the deck near midfield. But it was a systematic overwhelming of an offensive line against Pitt's defensive front. Maybe you see a little bit of that today. You just need a little bit of explosiveness to go with it in the ground game.
Well, part of what was happening in that game against Pitt, like you're talking about, and by the way, if you do that against Pitt, you are doing it against a hard-nosed group, not an elite group, not an overly talented group, but Narduzzi teams are always tough. And they are always hard-nosed, and they will always hit you. You got to earn everything you get. You can, because they're not always all that talented, but you've got to bring the funk to the party, baby. And we were doing that in that moment until the fumble happened. It's infinitely frustrating, but you were succeeding on first down, which allowed you to run tempo in the run game. And it was that 4 yards in a cloud of dust, followed by 5 yards in a cloud of dust, followed by 4 yards in a cloud of dust, followed by here's 3 more for that ass. Here we go. And, you could see Pitt was getting worn down in that moment until they coughed it up.
Well, and this is where if you had a healthy and explosive Tommy Castellanos, that's unstoppable, because at some point he's going to keep.
That's correct.
And there's 25 yards and your spirit is broken. But of course he isn't healthy. And I'm not trying to say Florida State's unlucky. They've known he's been hurt since he got rolled up on in week 2. And they said that they knew that in the first drive of the Pitt game, apparently it was the first play from scrimmage, he re-aggravated whatever it was. So they knew in the course of the game what they had and what they didn't have. You're allowed to find something else that works, that complements the running between the tackles. But I think we both agree here, it's very, very simple for the Wake Forest game, that the baseline has to be the running between the tackles. From there, it would be great to get quarterback run because it works and it accentuates your strength in the traditional ground game. And then I think you need some explosive shots over the top because they don't always play shell. That's where the extra pressure comes from. That means that somebody's open. Although, given what Tommy has been able to read and not read, you can't count on that to be successful with any consistency.
We will come back and kind of give you our predictions, if you will. I don't know about predictions as much as the final things to keep a close eye on for this football game if Florida State's going to be successful. Let's hope that's the case. It's tough to predict these days. It is an ACC game after all. Warchant Game Day continues in a moment. So big picture, we come into this game and the numbers are trending poorly for Florida State defensively. And that's something that has to get remedied now. You could say, yeah, but Jeff, I think they're trending poorly with the offense. Well, they've lost 4 straight games, so they're trending poorly in a lot of areas. But if you want to go big picture and talk about the number of plays and what your ranking is now, as we sit here this evening, Florida State's faced defensively 444 plays. In terms of plays per game, it's around 63. The total EPA continues to be precipitously dropping. They're 57th there. An EPA per play, they're 56th. An EPA per game, they're 56th. The success rate, they are number 38. So that's not terrible, but it continues to drop. And then starting field position, I don't really care about as much, but they are top 25 there. So we're seeing these numbers trend more towards the 50s and 60s as to what they are as a defense. Offensively, Florida State, those numbers are dropping too, but because they were so good through 3 games, really 4 games, they were elite. And I mean that statistically speaking, they were elite. They did almost everything well. They got really fat, some of these numbers, really fat in the 2 games in which they scored 1,000 points. And that has skewed what they are. But those numbers are dropping as well. It's starting to fall more towards top 25 instead of top 5, top 10. Right now, if you want to make a disingenuous argument, you would reach out to me and Tom and say, well, they're top 10, top 15, and this, and this. And then I would dismiss you because it's disingenuous. But I would also say, we watch the games. You think this is an elite offense? No, you don't. You don't. But you're just defending your guy at that point. So that's where we're at. And defensively, I have greater concern than I do offensively. But with an unhealthy quarterback, both of those things have got to be, well, attention grabbing to say the least. How do they play tonight? Is he healthy? Will they make a move if he's not? And does this team show up and play hard on defense tonight? Because if they do, they're not going against a great offense. This should be a winnable game. I guess it's not surprising that Florida State entered the week as a 7.5-point favorite, moved up to 8, moved to 9, moved to 10. Depending on where you're looking, 9.5, 10 for Florida State favored in this game. That's about personnel, both that Florida State has and some that Wake Forest doesn't, including injuries. But that doesn't account for the direction the two teams are going, the way they've played as of late. It doesn't account for whether or not between the years they're right.
Yeah, if you add up all tangibles about the quality of athlete that these two teams have, you're picking Florida State, but there's nothing about tangibles that can explain 2-10 last year. There's nothing about tangibles that can explain 4 straight losses. At some point over that sample set, you're going to win a football game when you're as talented as Florida State is relative to the series of those 4 opponents. I get Miami's more, but you take my point. It's 4 games of football. You're going to win one of them unless there are some intangibles at play. So that's what makes this very, very difficult. Is I really like to stay in the tangible world to speak about what is potentially going to happen, to predict what is potentially going to happen. I'm not one of those guys that doesn't believe in momentum. I think, especially in college football, momentum is a real thing, and that's an intangible. But it shouldn't be such that an intangible overwhelms all reality, and that you have power ratings and Vegas spreads that say you're an 18-point favorite or a 9-point favorite or a 10-point favorite or a 6-point favorite, and you look like the worst team in each instance that you take the field as a favorite. So what gives? What's the reason? You can't explain it, so all you can do is say, I hope it doesn't happen again, whatever it is, and I hope whatever it is has been addressed by this coaching staff during the bye week and during practice. If you just look at the numbers by themselves, Florida State should win this game. I don't know, about 10 points. I think that's a little rich, but they should win this game by between 3 and 7 points. But you're nuts for predicting it because they've won one ACC game since before Dublin. That's from the ACC championship game when you were in the suite when we beat Louisville.
I was.
That night in December, Charlotte, North Carolina.
It was a lovely night.
One ACC game since December of 2023.
Well, it's interesting because I think big picture, again, since we're talking in that way, Florida State fans hear that and they say that was a fateful night indeed. The win over Louisville to capture the league championship, the trophy held on high, and a belief that you were about to go to the college football playoff and compete for a national title. That was stripped from you in an unprecedented move. The integrity of the sport suffered. I think this program has suffered ever since. I do not solely blame the snub for the reason Florida State finds themselves in this position, because that would be foolhardy, in my opinion. They've had plenty of time to get past the snub and show up and play a good football game in the ACC. They've had plenty of time, and if they couldn't, then he shouldn't be here. So I get it. All of that adds up, though, to this, which is that something broke and it hasn't been fixed. Recruiting's been poor. They don't have the athletes they once had. They are easily exposed. They've been mentally weak as well. There are few exceptions to this. And if you want to say, I think it's this or I think it's that, have at it. Every Florida State fan has done that. What I do know is that we have played 20 games, and of the last 20, Florida State's 5-15. 5-15 over their last 20 games. Empirically, that is not worthy of a program whose standards are so much higher than 5-15. You cannot abide by that. You cannot excuse that away. You cannot blame the snub solely. You cannot say we've been unlucky. This is a program that is in desperate shape right now at a time where it's very difficult to have that conversation because they're leveraged to the hilt with all of the changes that they made and the buildings that they built. And now you're kind of just stuck feeling like you're in limbo until they do make a move. It's the hope that Florida State wins tonight, but what's always there, what's omnipresent every time we have a conversation about a singular game like we're having this evening, like we're having today, there's always this thought, yeah, but man, you're talking about a singular football game. There's so much more that has to get righted here. And that's what makes all of this tough. But again, If you want to hope against hope and believe, despite overwhelming evidence, that this could all turn around and that you're not going to have to make changes and you're not going to have to pay a massive buyout, it has to start with a convincing win tonight. And then from there, you hope that there's some sort of momentum that could be put together that sees this group win 8 games. And all of a sudden, maybe we're having a different conversation. I don't know. But it would have to start tonight with a win at home.
They could have multiple score wins down the stretch here to finish with 8 wins. It would still be a mistake. We've seen what this is. And we know it because it could be noisy for a week or two. The Virginia result by itself was a little noisy. You get unlucky in a couple situations and you look at that game by itself. But when you're talking about a 20-game sample size and you win 25% of those games, you win 25%. Take out FCS and directional schools, and how many games have you won in your last 20?
Oh no, it's really, really ugly.
It's Cal and Alabama.
It is.
Enough.
Yeah, it's Cal and Alabama. Yeah.
It's Cal and Alabama are the only games that you won against non-directional schools in your last 20. That's unbelievable. But it's the reality that we're living in, and the space between what you believe your roster to be and what your results are, therein lies coaching. That's why coaching is so difficult to put a quantity on. That's why buyouts are so expensive, because the coaches operate in the intangibles. You believe in them or you don't. And I would say that you could have a result today. You could have a result next week against Clemson. There's no guarantee that they believe in this guy next year, because half the roster is going to be replaced anyway. And what gets difficult is when I'm trying to look at, well, how would I assign percentages of blame for where we are? There's a part of me that really wants to instinctively flock to looking at the defense and saying, well, we expected the defense to be middling this year, and this is an improvement. And I don't think they're as much to blame as the offense. But then I have to think about the Pitt game, and then I have to think about the hidden yards against Virginia, even though I pin that loss more on situational football that Friday night than I do on the defense. I think the defense did enough in that first half to put them in a position to win. You're up 21-14 after having a 14-point swing and a turnover inside the 10-yard line. I could almost make the case that Tony White is doing kind of what we thought he was going to do this year, until I look at that Pitt game and I say, good gracious, are you kidding me? That was worse in some ways than what we saw with Adam Fuller last year. So I can't. It's not a neat thing. This has been a total team effort, in another way of putting it. This has been a 3-phase effort for Florida State to get to where they are right now.
That's probably the thing that's most damning, Tom, is that the special teams has been terrible. The defense has, backslid. The offense is inconsistent, and now the quarterback's hurt, so he's really of no use to you. Yeah, you're seeing every facet of the game and every part of the coaching for this program let you down, and it makes it difficult to hang your hat on something and believe that something's going to go in your favor. I think, honestly, the Pitt game was a reaction to the Miami game where you sold out against the run. And, that you got burned in that game because you did that. But I didn't blame him for doing that. After you'd been so gashed in the run game against Virginia, you had to do that. And
yes,
you got toasted. And so then you pulled back and you said, well, we can't do that. We're just going to get beat up. Teams are going to know that we're committed to the run, and they're going to throw over our heads, and they're going to do whatever they're going to do. They're going to kill us in the screen game, all that stuff. And so I think by trying to pull back, they were betwixt and between, as we say, and they didn't look like they were committed to anything in that game, any one facet. And so that cost them dearly. And then what comes with that is a loss of confidence. They also, and this is a big part of what's happened here too, they were razor thin, man. This is why, again, depth did not come into play against Alabama. They were healthy. It was the first game of the year, all 22 starters ready to roll. And they were able to play at a certain level and a certain intensity because depth and the wear and tear of football, war of attrition, as we call it, hadn't affected them yet. It's game one. But as they began to lose a guy here or there, or even starters played through injury, or at the very least, dinged, those players became less effective. Their backups were not nearly as good as the starters, and Florida State got exposed. And that's, again, a roster problem. So it's not just on the field, it's off the field. It's every facet.
So how about 5 phases? You got the 3 phases of the game. You got coaching, and then you've got roster development and management as a 5th phase. And this has been a total collapse in that regard. And yet, with all that said, you feel like, or at least I do, I feel like if you don't get rolled up on a quarterback in game 2, you're over 500 right now, and the sky's not falling. But the margin should never be that thin, even in this era of parity, which we are watching happen before our very eyes. It shouldn't be this thin of a margin for Florida State to be 2-2 in the ACC, to go 0-4 in the ACC. Good gracious. That's really hard to pull off. Congratulations to all.
All right, so with that, final 20 seconds, do they rise up, play well tonight, and get a win?
I hope so. I can't bank on it. I hope so. So that's the best I got.
Tom and I leave you on Warchant Game Day with an I hope so. We say goodbye with an I hope so. Thanks for watching Warchant Game Day, everybody. Be well. Thanks for swinging by Hotel Indigo. They're great here